Christian Horner had a lot to say about the latest race in Monaco, but it looks like he threw some shade at what used to be a team that always fought against Red Bull, Mercedes. Max Verstappen found himself stuck in a weird spot between both Mercedes drivers, and this will probably be the only time a Mercedes driver finishes ahead of Max in a fair race. Horner thinks that Mercedes could have done way better than they did, but is this just him taking a cheap shot at his old rivals? After realizing that Red Bull isn't as awesome as they were in 2022 and 2023? And what's the bigger problem that the Austrian team needs to look at? It's pretty clear that Red Bull are the biggest losers of the 2024 Monaco race, not just because Max messed up his fast lap in qualifying and Perez got kicked out of qualifying, but also because of the huge crash that the Mexican driver had with Kevin Magnussen. The damage cost around $2 to $3 million, which would totally mess up Red Bull's budget for bringing car improvements to fix what seems to be a car with some serious problems. But if you asked Horner, a big issue for the Monaco race was also how Mercedes acted. Like I said at the start, Max found himself in a really weird spot having to drive between both Mercedes drivers. And with the red flag basically completing the required pit stop rule, there was almost no chance for the three-time world champion to make any surprise moves. Even when he put on new tires and got super close to Russell, there wasn't enough space for these 2-meter-wide racing cars. So Max had nothing to do but sit back and drive for 78 laps in complete boredom. This is something that Horner thinks could have been different if Mercedes had played their cards better instead of going for such a giving up kind of race. Talking about what actually happened in Monaco, Ferrari is now just 24 points behind Red Bull in the team championship, and Leclerc is only 31 points behind Max in the driver standings. Horner said, "I think we face stronger competition here, but maybe not with Mercedes. I think Ferrari and McLaren are looking really competitive now and they can't be ignored. It's a long championship and obviously they took a good chunk of points today. I didn't really understand Mercedes' race today. It was a hugely careful race by George to give up so much time and then go so fast at the end of the race. It didn't really make a lot of sense, but I don't think it would have changed anything anyway. They weren't going to pass anybody. It was just a very giving up race to try and defend 5th place. The story has changed a lot, and getting 5th place here in Monaco is definitely a huge win for Mercedes, especially when you add the fact that Hamilton finished 7th too. The truth is that Mercedes are now the 4th fastest team, so finishing ahead of Perez with both cars definitely makes the Silver Arrows happy while it makes Red Bull a bit angry. Red Bull are now in some competitive waters after enjoying two very dominant seasons in 2022 and 2023. While they knew times like this would happen, they had no idea it would happen like this with Ferrari and McLaren, and while Max would have probably qualified 2nd or 3rd if he hadn't hit the wall at turn 1 on his last fast lap, fate meant he got stuck between both Mercedes drivers in Monaco. What Horner means by calling it a giving-up race is that even Russell wasn't happy with the pace he had to keep on the medium tires. The fact that the British driver drove 78 laps on the medium tires, just like Max and Hamilton, shows that he was nowhere near the best driving time. He lost 3 to 4 seconds from what he thought was perfect for Monaco, and he did this by not going full speed on the straight parts of the track and driving in a higher gear. When talking about how the race went overall, Russell was full of questions. As he said, it was a long old race, a strange one as well. The first 30 laps we were just cruising around. When Max pitted, I put my foot down, and it was only afterwards that I realized how much we had closed the gap on the Ferraris and McLarens. I was really pleased about that. Max put me under a bit of pressure, but it was pretty under control. The only hope of a good race here was a bit of excitement with strategy, but with the red flag, it was out of the window, and we got the maximum we could. Now we can understand why Horner is angry, because of all the points his team lost. However, the nature of this track is definitely something that needs to be talked about, whether or not it's worth racing under these conditions. On a rare occasion, both Max and Hamilton agreed on something. This is not a race for modern F1 cars. And whether there should be a required pit stop apart from a red flag accident or something else, a change is long overdue. The top 10 drivers finished in the exact same order as they started. When talking about this, Lewis Hamilton said, "I can only imagine that the race was boring for the fans. I mean, ultimately our tires, they can do a whole race. We have got to find ways to spice it up, maybe a required 3 stops or something to spice it up a bit more." The race had nothing happening. Everyone drove so slowly it didn't matter what tire you were on. We were driving seconds off the pace. I don't know what it was like watching, but I'm sure people were falling asleep. Because of the crash, everyone switched over to the other tire and just managed at a really slow pace. So definitely one of the dullest races I think I've been in. But that is Monaco for you. Again, this is an opinion that has been shared by most of the drivers, with Christian Horner having a special place in his heart for Monaco, but also admitting that something needs to change for this track to stay on. The calendar in the coming years. The calendar is only getting bigger, and with massive interest from places like Chicago and New York, it's very likely that Monaco's lack of competitive racing would be the deciding factor when F1 decides whether this venue is worth keeping on the calendar. Of course, the glamour and lots of fancy stuff are here, but that means nothing if the drivers are completely unhappy with what they have to deal with. As for Horner, the frustration can also be traced to the lack of competitiveness the RB20 has shown in the last 3 races. Although Max managed to win in Imola while also participating in the 24-hour sim race of Nürburgring, he failed to win in Miami, finishing second, while missing the podium for the first time in 2024 in a race he finished in Monaco. This shows that the RB20 has a basic flaw, as Max called it, and maybe Horner and Marco would be smarter to work on it rather than keep their eyes on Mercedes' garage or their tricks on the track when talking about the car's further development and whether or not results like this were expected before the season started. Horner said, "I think the issues of the RB20 are an ongoing process. Of course, you're into the law of diminishing returns and your focus changes depending on what your problems are. So I think quite a lot of focus will not take part on questions like, why did we have these bouncing issues? Why is the car struggling on the curbs? The VCA RB car is running with our suspension from last year and it does not seem to have the same issues. Top that off, it seems like a large chunk of what was planned to go into upgrades will be directed towards fixing Perez's car, one that suffered from $2 to $3 million of damage in a period where you're trying to get the best out of the car. This is the last news you'd like to hear. So, with all of this information, do you think that Red Bull will have a proper challenge on their hands in 2024? And with Max's comments about the basic flaw in the car, do you think it's something that can be fixed for 2024? Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, check out the video that's appearing on your screen right now.